It's going to be super tight, and a lot of this is going to be super wrong.
Hey, what's up guys, Aarava here, and welcome to my F1 2022 season predictions. I'm finally making this video. So many of you have been asking me on pretty much every social media platform, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere, in YouTube comments about what my predictions are for the upcoming F1 2022 season. Now, unlike previous years where I've maybe done them quite early, I thought this year I would wait till after testing, because honestly, this is maybe one of the most unpredictable F1 seasons we've had in a long while, or to my memory really, because there's obviously maybe been some patterns in testing and in the run-up to this whole season, but at the end of the day as well, more so than any other season, because the cars are so different, we've had very unique problems in testing, like porpoising, which we've not seen since ground effect used to be in Formula 1, and very unique characteristics and designs of cars. The Mercedes with no side pods, you've got the Ferrari with the kind of U-shaped tunneling effect, Red Bull with the biggest undercut you've ever seen, and so many other kind of little foibles with other cars, you know, McLaren brake issues, we've had Haas with so much turmoil going to this season, Magnussen returning to the grid. You know, there's been so many variables that it's very hard to call, so I put off this video until after testing. And before we delve into this, I'm going to take a leaf out of Jolyon Palmer's analysis and presenting from a recent Formula 1 video and say that this is what my predictions are, but I think they're going to be horrendously wrong. They probably will be, as probably a lot of other people's predictions as well. So starting off in P20, I'm going to put Guan Yu Zhou, obviously a new debutant to the Formula 1 season. You know, he had a long while in the junior categories before he got up into F1, so for me, I just don't see him being any higher than P20. I think even Latifi will be beating him in the Williams car, and he is who I'm going to be putting in P19. Guan Yu Zhou obviously comes with financial backing, and that's a major reason why he's in Alfa Romeo right now. So I hope I'm proven wrong for his sake. Obviously, in our career mode series, Guan Yu Zhou's actually been a real big star, but that is a video game, and in real life, I just don't think he's going to be cutting the mustard. Latifi, P19, you'll see where I've put Albon in relation to that. I just think that Albon is going to be not exactly in the same way that Russell outperformed Latifi, but I think Albon is going to show that he is a very, very good driver, and that he deserves this chance to be back into Formula 1 versus Latifi's performance. So I'm going to put Latifi 19, maybe a bit harsh, because to be fair to Nicky, he has improved quite a bit since he joined Formula 1, but I'm going to put him in P19. Then we've got P18 Valtteri Bottas. Now, obviously, Bottas is a good driver. He's a race winner. He's been up against Lewis Hamilton for many, many years. But just basing off testing, Alfa Romeo, I just don't think they're going to be that insane this year. What I will say is, though, I think from about, I would say even P11 down to P20 in these standings, I think there is hopefully not going to be a backmarker team. I think there's just going to be one big midfield, basically. So even though I'm placing certain drivers in positions, I think all of from P11 down to P20, I reckon there might only be a couple of points separating a lot of these drivers. I think there's going to be so many variables track to track of where they're going to perform. But yeah, I just have the feeling Alfa Romeo aren't going to be off to the best start. They've had a lot of reliability issues in testing. Their cars looked more comfortable, and to be fair, Bottas just did pop in some decent times at the end of testing too at Bahrain. But overall, I just think they're going to have a quieter season like they did last year. Then we've got P17 Lance Stroll, P16 Mick Schumacher, and P15 Sebastian Vettel. So Aston Martin have had a very quiet testing. Now, to be fair to them and that team, that what used to be known as Racing Point and so, they've always had quiet tests. You know, they've just gone about their business. To be fair, the analysis has shown from the kind of experts that Aston Martin looked a bit uncomfortable at the start of testing, and then by the end of Bahrain testing, it looks like they've dialed in a better setup to be more comfortable. But a comfortable car doesn't necessarily mean a quick car in qualifying and a quick car throughout the entire race. So I think Aston Martin, unfortunately for Sebastian Vettel, will be having a bit of a dud season probably even more so than last year was the case when they got kind of nerfed by that floor change. And it's a shame because I think Sebastian really needs this season to be good for him to continue in Formula 1. But I just don't see that happening. So that's why I'm putting them 15 and 17. I put Schumacher in between them just because I actually just think it'll be kind of nice for Schumacher and Vettel to be together. Obviously, Vettel's kind of taken Mick under his wing. So it's just kind of almost cute in a way that they'll be together in the standings like that. And I think actually the Haas, in terms of their strategy of not doing anything last year to be better this year, I think is actually going to work out for them. Their car, there's certain aero bits and design elements that are more aggressive interpretations of the rules than other teams. So I think genuinely Haas have actually a little bit of pace in there to mix it up finally with the midfield boys a little bit for those last positions to mid ones and maybe surprises with some points depending on the situation in the race, kind of like they used to before 2020 and even 2019 when it started to go downhill a little bit. Then I've got P14 Alex Albon. I think the Williams will be taking a step forward, but as all the experts have said on TV and various other kind of news outlets, I think a lot of teams have taken steps forward clearly. I think the gap from the top to the bottom may be hopefully smaller overall, but it still means there's going to be some variation. So even though Williams, I feel, have taken a step forward, I don't think they'll be taking as much of a step forward to go any higher than P14 in the standings with Alex Albon. And like I said just earlier, I think Albon to Latifi, that is a massive gap, but I do believe in Albon being that good in that car, hopefully, and proving that he deserves to be in Formula 1. Maybe that's being too harsh on Latifi on reflection, but I'm just going to go for it. I haven't seen enough of Latifi to warrant him being higher up than he is right now in my prediction. P13 is going to be the man who has returned to Formula 1, Kevin Magnussen. Look, Magnussen was a very aggressive driver when he was in F1, so I reckon he'll be wrestling that Haas, getting the elbows out, and able to maybe get a surprise point or here and two in races when there's a bit of chaos there. He's got the experience, obviously. He's a very experienced driver, so that counts for a lot when you've got those chaotic races. And although I do believe Mick Schumacher is a very competent, good driver, and is going to be a great yardstick to have Magnussen there, I think the experience alone for K-Mag will see him be higher up the order in the standings compared to Mick Schumacher. Schumacher is, Mick's kind of shown that he's a bit of a slower learner, I think. He's still adapting, and again, he will be adapting to this car versus Magnussen. I reckon he'll be able to hit the ground running a bit more. Even though he's been out of Formula 1, he's still been racing, and he's shown straight away in testing that he's comfortable with the car. Next up is going to be the two Alpine boys, Ocon P12, Alonso P11. It's been a very tough test for Alpine. They've not looked that insane. L Plan is, not looking that great at the moment because, they had reliability issues in Spain. That wasn't the case of Bahrain, but they haven't looked that electric. There's obviously some pace in the car when they lowered the fuel because Alonso did pop in a good time, but there's nothing in testing, any glimpses showing me that they've made the massive jump that Alonso is maybe hoping they would. Obviously that could change later in the season, but I just don't think so. I don't think they're going to make that miracle jump that Alonso will be hoping based off what we see in testing. P10, I'm going to put Tsunoda. I really hope Yuki hits the ground running a lot more than he did last year. Clearly, his second half of the season was so much better, and he himself said that he's a lot fitter and ready for Formula 1 now this season. And so I'm kind of banking on Tsunoda being a lot closer, and I think he'll be right there giving their rivals a close run for their money. Their rivals being, I think, McLaren. I think McLaren and AlphaTauri might be very close together. And so P9 is going to be Ricciardo, Gasly P8, and Norris P7. McLaren, obviously, I would love to see them bridge the gap more to the top three teams, especially for Lando's sake. But I think even Lando's admitted that it seems like, obviously, they still have to sort brake issues, because right now they had massive brake issues that they couldn't sort for the race. But even Lando's, suggested that even Haas could maybe give them a run for the money, depending on the situation or, the spec, and other teams. Obviously, that includes other teams around them. And I think McLaren, if they're honest with themselves, they've not had the smoothest test. and it doesn't look like they've made a massive leap forward as much as Ferrari maybe have per se. So I'm going to put Norris P7, best of the rest, Gasly P8. I think Gasly's going to have another great strong season in AlphaTauri and be quite close to Norris in the standings. Ricciardo and Tsunoda, I think those 4 drivers are going to be separated by a mere couple of points come the end of the season, I think, in my opinion. Like was the case from P11 down to P20. I think that will be a very close affair. I think you're going to have basically that will be midfield B, and midfield A or midfield A plus will be P7 down to P10, the AlphaTauri and McLaren. Maybe stick one driver from the other remaining teams lower than them. I mean, P11 down to P20. Maybe stick one of them in that close fight. But I see McLaren and AlphaTauri. I just have a hunch that they're going to be the kind of midfield A plus. I could be so wrong. We could rock up and Haas could be actually mental. I don't know. It's hard to tell from testing, but that's why we like predictions, because it's a bit silly, and like I said, everything will be absolutely wrong. Right, top 6 here. Now, this is where it gets a bit juicy and where people start getting the knives out and getting a bit aggy about where I'm putting people. You gotta remember, I'm an absolute neutral to Formula 1. I literally don't actually care where anyone comes, you know? I just want a good season, basically. Obviously, I want Lando to do well because I know the man personally now, but in terms of the rest of them, I couldn't care less. I just want a cool season with good fighting, good racing. So don't come at me, or if you do, I mean, you just know I'm not going to care and read the comment too much with any kind of, you know, to heart, basically. So P6, I'm going to put Sergio Perez. P5, George Russell. Carlos Sainz in P4. So those 3 are basically the quote-unquote, I guess, secondary driver to their counterparts, even though I believe Sainz can closely match Leclerc. And honestly, I think the top 5 here may be separated by a mere, I think, 15 points, really, to be honest. I think Perez, again, even though he's a great driver, in a Red Bull car is going to be hard to perform as much as the other drivers who are counterparts to their kind of, you know, the golden boy of the team, basically. Because I think just, you know, obviously the vibe has been the Red Bull car is made for Verstappen. So I'm going to put Perez P6. Maybe he's like 20 points off. P1 maybe, and Russell and Sainz very close together, and they're not too far off. Who I think is going to be in P3 is going to be Hamilton. And the reason this is the way it is because clearly Mercedes are struggling a little bit with a porpoising issue. I don't believe Mercedes are as far off as they say they are. They do this every single time. Everyone is saying it. Ferrari, Red Bull, you know, they're all the drivers, they're saying Mercedes do this all the time. Even we know Mercedes do this all the time, but I think there is something to be said about their porpoising issues. Clearly, the car is not as comfortable. Even Brundle and every analyst looking at the car around the circuit, clearly there's some speed in the car, and they've been very, you know, clever with their no side pod, you know, design. But the car doesn't look comfortable right now. It looks a bit of a diva, you know, 2017 vibes. So I think it's going to take a few races for Mercedes to understand their diva car. But once they do, you can bet your top dollar they'll come back through in the constructors fight and individually as well. So at the start of the season, I'm actually pegging Hamilton and Russell to be lower. And then as they're going through the season, they'll come back through a little bit. And I think Hamilton will give the top 2 a run for their money. And so you can see who the top 2 remaining are. It's Verstappen and Leclerc. Well, for me, I'm going to go a little bit differently because everyone seems to be pinning their hopes on Ferrari and Leclerc being finally ready to fight for a world championship and get the P1. I think Leclerc P2 and Verstappen P1. I think Red Bull are going to be so determined to make sure they can win the championship again with Verstappen. I reckon Max will take it again and do the back-to-back. Leclerc, I think he's going to give him a very close fight, though. I really hope so. I think that top 3 is going to be separated by 5 points. I really hope so. I really, really hope so. Could be proven so wrong, and like I said, this could be all so wrong. And to be honest, I've only not put Leclerc P1 because I've seen so many people put Leclerc P1. And I'm just like, for the sake of difference, I'll put Verstappen P1. Because a lot of times in F1 history, the reigning world champion has a very good chance of retaining the championship. You know, there's little eras in Formula 1, and this may be the start of another mini Red Bull era, where off the back of 2021, even though there's been a massive regulation change, and usually eras begin at regulation changes, I think from 2021 to 2022, I think this could be a start of a mini Red Bull era where they're able to give Verstappen a car to win a couple of championships, perhaps. But obviously, Mercedes are going to be there, Ferrari are going to be there, and this could easily be Hamilton P1, Verstappen P2, Leclerc P3. Leclerc P1, Hamilton P2, Verstappen P3. You know, it could easily be a toss-up between those two. Those three. I don't believe Sainz is going to ruffle the feathers as much as he maybe did last season, and the same for Russell. I don't think Russell will ruffle the feathers of Hamilton as much as maybe Leclerc did when he came into Ferrari against Vettel. But that's just my thinking. Let me know what you guys make of these predictions down below. Well, we can all agree on one thing. It's so hard to call because I think like I said, that midfield is going to be so tightly bunched. We really hope so for some great infighting. And then, you know, I think Ferrari versus Red Bull, you know, with Leclerc v Verstappen, I think it's going to be a vibe like 2017 and 18 where Ferrari and Merc were so closely matched and contested. And I think Merc aren't going to be there at the start just because of the porpoising issues, unless they have a massive fix, you know, magically in 1 week, basically. And then there's no doubt in my mind, Merc will come back through. Hamilton will be in this title fight along with Leclerc and Verstappen. So there it is. Finally, my F1 2022 predictions. I'm not going to bother with the teams because you can pretty much guess where the teams would place based off the drivers here. But let me know, guys, what your predictions are, what you make of mine, how silly you think them are, or right they are. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to read too much into them. Obviously, I'll have a look through the comments. It'll be interesting to see what your guys' predictions are. But in terms of what you make of my predictions, I'm not going to really take it to heart as much as the same way I don't think any of you would take my opinions to heart of your predictions, because at the end of the day, they're all just so silly because there's no way to tell. There is literally no way to tell because testing is so wish-washy in F1, especially these days, and hopefully, we're all hoping the grid's going to be so close, it's going to be so hard to call. But yeah, a lot of you guys have been asking for this, so I thought I'd finally give it to you on the eve of the first race at the Bahrain Grand Prix coming up this weekend. So if you aren't around here, do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll catch you guys around. Goodbye.